Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's Career Chat. I'm Krista Harmon, and I am a workforce development consultant at the Kent Intermediate School District. And I'm so delighted to have Robin Wondergem with us today. She is a director of human resources, but her career has evolved. So we're looking forward to hearing about that. Welcome, Robin.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So, Robin, one of the first things we like to ask here at the Career Chats for young people is when you were back in high school, 15 or 16 years old, did you think you'd grow up and be a director of human resources and work at a construction company? Tell us about your early thinking.
No, I think I always knew I would work with people. I really enjoy listening to people, helping people, knowing more about them. So I did always know that. But I think HR has a side to it that's rooted in compliance and really black and white thinking that I never thought of. So it's been exciting to get here. This has been a goal of mine to join a leadership team. And this is recent for me. So I'm very excited to have gotten where I am in my career. And yeah, a high school me would definitely not think I'd be here.
So let's stay in high school just for a minute. What kind of, was school something you enjoyed? Had you done any kind of career exploration, job shadows, or did your school use any type of career software? Tell us about that early thinking, and then we'll talk about that first step after high school.
Sure. We did not do any career readiness when I was in high school. It's been so encouraging to see this for the high school level to be thinking about that, I think is so important. I think I was lucky to my dad is actually in human resources. And so I had some exposure to it and knew that I wanted to work with people in that capacity. But no, in high school, I wasn't exposed really to any shadowing. I didn't get to speak with people in the career. And even when I think about the courses that I took in high school, they weren't even business focused at the time. I've seen a lot of progress in terms of the courses that are offered and even the focus of the high school as a whole, to consider, technology or science or whatever it is that you're focused in or interested in, that you can have great exposure. So I had none of that. I was a decent student. I followed the prompts, but I wouldn't consider myself to be an academic person by any means. I definitely excel working with people and talking with people than I do taking a test or writing a paper in the way that was needed. So not my favorite. I'm glad to be done with school.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you're a people person. So when you were in high school, did you know you wanted to go to college? Did you struggle to figure out what kind of major? Tell us some of your thinking at the time.
Sure. I did know I wanted to go to college because I knew I wanted to work in a business. So when I thought about like the trades or art, like when I thought about the fields that I could be in, I knew I wanted to work in a business and would require a 4-year degree. So I was set on doing that pretty immediately after high school. And I really wasn't decided for probably 2 years once I got to college. So it took me some time to take some courses. I knew I wanted to work in a business, so it was easy for me to choose that I would have a focus in the business school. But I know a lot of people who I went to school with who were completely undecided in that first freshman year, and were taking courses in like nursing and math and, a couple of different things before they actually decided which school do I want to be a part of.
Yeah, and I think it's something that young people that are watching this, like they know they want to work in business, but what does that mean, right? It's like, how do I find my spot in business? It's such a broad topic. So you went
Absolutely.
off to college and your major was business then. And how did you start to narrow it down? You happen to have a dad who was in HR. Most young people have no idea what HR means or human resources.
Sure.
So tell us about that. And then how did you pick your major?
Sure. So, yes, I went to a school that offered a school of business, quote unquote, which allowed me to take like accounting courses, economic courses, marketing, human resources. So all of the different spokes. I went to a liberal arts college, which encouraged, having a really broad background and having a broad education. Whereas I know there are some schools that focus right away, like I could pick HR right away and do that HR track the whole time. So I spent my first 2 years going to accounting courses, going to economics, finance, marketing, and I like hated them all. So I pretty quickly was able to narrow it down because numbers weren't really exciting to me and marketing was a little bit too conceptual, but I noticed that in every single class, like I loved the group projects. I loved understanding, the strengths that people had to lend to a team. And when we would talk about human resources in my courses, it was always about the people. It was always about culture and how do we plan for the future using the people that work at this organization. So it felt like a good fit for me because I knew I had some of that black and white business in my mind, but I also knew like accounting and finance and even marketing weren't really fitting to my skill set. So it was fun to get to see that evolve, I think, over a long period of time.
Yeah, and I think that's great for young people who are watching this to understand that within that major, you were able to explore a little bit those first 2 years, which helped narrow it down for you based on your experiences. And you had mentioned earlier, like a lot of, in my mind, HR, human resources was compliance. And so that pushed me away from it because I hadn't done the proper exploration of human resources and all the tangents, which we'll certainly talk about today to help young people
100%.
understand. So
I
you
think
graduated from college with, you narrowed it down. And so does your business degree in human resources or just like a general business administration with a human resource
sure.
focus? What do young people know about that?
It's a business degree with a focus in human resources. So I actually got a psychology minor. And that kind of evolved over time too, because I was so interested in the people side of things. I really appreciated the liberal arts focus because I was even just going to add, as you were talking there, that having that exposure to accounting, to marketing, like gave me an appreciation for that field. And as a human resources professional, I have to at least know what they're doing in order to help them be most successful in their role. So I think that broad exposure really helped me in my career. And in addition to that, I got to focus on psychology a little bit, understanding how people form their thoughts and behaviors and what's important to them, what motivates them, which has been really helpful working for businesses as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't you help? Maybe young people might not know what the term liberal arts means. Can you describe what you mean by that?
Sure. Great question. So I went to a liberal arts Christian college here in West Michigan. I ended up going to Calvin. Usually liberal arts focuses, like I've been saying, on a much broader term. So they really they don't even incentivize, they require you to focus on a broad spectrum of classes. I know somewhere like a Grand Valley locally, you could pick human resources, a very specific subsect of business, and only do human resources classes throughout your time so that you feel very well equipped in that particular area when you graduate. But in liberal arts, I started like my first 2 years was all like what a lot of people call like a gen ed, a general education course. And so I was doing a statistics course, I was taking an English class, I was taking a religion class. I was really going the wide spectrum of courses. And the way that a liberal arts education sees it as an advantage is that you have a very broad education and you can write a paper, you can speak to a statistic when I'm in my human resources job. So they really see that well-roundedness as a positive when you graduate.
Yeah, so young people, as you're looking at colleges, that's something to consider. That it's a little more well-rounded education versus going directly into your major and focusing on just those classes. So thank you for that, Robin. So as you're finishing college, were you part of any groups during college that did you find your people, other human resource? Was there a club? Did you have to find your own internship? Tell us what some of those experiences that you finished out your education.
Yeah. Well, the HR group, or excuse me, major at Calvin is actually really small. I would say there was maybe 5 other people who were on the same track that I was when I graduated. And so, yes, I did have to be pretty intentional about seeking out those experiences. We did have an HR club. And honestly, they've expanded it a lot since I've left, and they've done some really amazing things where I know the club will visit a local business and get to hear from professionals. They've even invited professionals into some of their meetings so that they can present on what they're thinking about and what they'd like to take action within Calvin. Outside of that, I was really intentional about seeking out an internship. So for me, I was able with my course schedule to be able to do a part-time internship during my junior year. In addition to that, I was able to do, two internships, one between my sophomore and junior year and one between my junior and senior year. So I went to career fairs. I talked to my guidance counselor, and they call them advisors really at the college level. And he made some connections for me, sent out some emails. It was super helpful to have somebody who was in the business field, who knew me, knew some of my strengths, who was able to help guide me a little bit. So I really leaned into that. And I think that speaks to my focus on people skills as well. Like, especially in West Michigan, I think the people that you know and the connections that you've made, whether it's in school or in a job or even like working retail, those connections will mean everything to you as you think about that career option. You never know who somebody knows, and you never know what kind of impression you're making in a job too. I'll just share a quick little something. I was able to intern at Wolverine Worldwide, my very first internship, and loved it. And I really was giving it like 150% every day. And little did I know, 4 years later, I'd have the opportunity to return. I think the impressions that I made when I was an intern, working part-time, is a very short time to make an impression, at least did me well enough to, be up for a position later in my life that was really focused on exactly what I wanted to do. So it was cool to have that full cycle moment. And I think it speaks to the smaller community that we have in West Michigan here and how much an impression you can make can mean something for your future.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I do want to pull out of that for the young people is one, notice how intentional Robin was with making those connections. She wasn't waiting for that to come to her. So that's something to really make a note of as you're pursuing the kind of career you want. And also the impression, like you say, you have to have a good work ethic. You're showing up on time. You have a good attitude. Those are the things that people remember and notice. Is there anything that you'd like to say? I know you don't want to brag up on yourself, but why do you think you were making a good impression, Robin? What do you want young people to know about that?
Sure. I think, especially as I work with hiring managers today, I'm in that seat a lot, looking at talent and recruiting and interviewing. I think something that just about everybody can agree upon is effort and interest and engagement is something that you just can't teach. So I think this was true for myself. I was just always really intentional about asking questions, coming, and being really excited about what we were up to that day. The first one to raise my hand when somebody said, I need help with this. I think all of those experiences made people know that they could trust that I was going to be there. I was going to step up. I was going to show up when it mattered. And I think you can do that in a lot of subtle ways. Like asking an informed question can go a really long way, both in an interview and when you're on the job. If you show that you care about what you're doing, that will always, be a positive thing for you. Even if it's not the job that you want today, if they can see that energy and that effort coming from you, they'll think of you when a new job opportunity comes available and sounds like a good fit for you. So I think showing engagement, showing interest, showing some curiosity about doing a good job will get you a lot of places.
Yeah, we do hear that from many employers, Robin. You can't teach that stuff. So young people, when you put yourself out there, you're really going to make a difference in
Absolutely.
those HR people. So because a lot of young people don't really know what a human resource person is, give us an example of what a typical day might be for you, Robin. What are you doing?
Sure. I jokingly like to call myself like a company therapist. I often, my door's wide open all the time. A lot of people drop in with questions about company policies or company events that are coming up or a change that's occurred, or because they want to vent about something that's going on in their team and they want some advice about what direction to head. A lot of my time is spent employee facing, working through problems, working through solutions, coming up with ideas about what we could do next to improve the experience at our company. But I also mentioned, there's a fair amount of compliance that happens in HR. So a lot of my time is spent thinking about the risk of something that we decide upon. I spend a lot of time looking at reports and systems, educating myself in terms of our employee population and how that complies with all of the Department of Labor needs. So there is a lot of compliance that goes into my role. In addition to that, I'm really the touch point for anything relating to your employment at an organization. So when you think about benefits at a company, like medical benefits, I am in charge of ensuring that those are facilitated throughout the organization, that I can answer any questions that you have about it. I'm responsible for events. So when you think about like your company party, usually HR is behind, depending on the size of your organization. Usually HR is planning and making sure that everybody's having a good time. So it can be a very fun role too, because you can control some of the fun that happens at an organization. But it's very different. Every day I'm doing something different. Every day I'm tasked with a new issue, and people are always changing and evolving. So that will always be my job.
What's your favorite part of it, and what's the least favorite part of it?
Did you say favorite part?
Yeah, favorite, and then also your least favorite.
My favorite part really is helping people. I think it's so rewarding to have somebody come in my office and leave with a smile. It's just the relationships that you're able to create. I mean, the company will change, the product that you're working with will change, but you'll always be able to connect with a person. And that's what I really love about HR. Oh gosh, my least favorite part about HR. It's hard to say because I like that my job is different every day. I don't know.
But that's great, Robin. I mean, you're enjoying your job, right?
Yeah.
That's the goal here. And so what I'm hearing you say is that if you're a people person who likes a lot of change and variety, you get to support people, but then also help make that company better by, being a problem solver in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
This could be a really great fit for some young
Yeah.
people.
It's a really great meeting of, that social relationship side, if you like that. But if you also like rules and like a right way to do something, this could be a great marriage of the two. It's a really good combination of, me following a rule book to ensure that I do that task properly. But at the same time, I have a human being coming into my office with a very nuanced problem that I have to help them through. So it's a great tie of the two.
Yeah, we have a lot of school counselors on the call today, and I guess I'm encouraging them to think of young people that way, that the people oriented who like to follow rules. This is a great job. That's awesome. So when you have your HR job, like young people want to know, like, how did you get that first job right out of college? Would you go to Indeed? Was it part of that internship? Kids like to know these transitions. How do we get to where we're going here?
Totally. Well, I do think it's all of it. Like a lot of things, you never know what connection is going to have a job available at whatever time. So I absolutely would recommend and almost require an internship. It gives you amazing connections. It shows that you're willing to come to work every day. It shows what your interest, like both of my internships were focused in human resources. So it showcased my passion and my commitment to that specific field. I will say the way that I actually ended up getting a job was a professor that used to be a professor at Calvin started her own business, and she worked in a consulting business for many years before I actually joined. But she came to our class one day. I introduced myself. I got up at the end of the class and introduced myself to her and told her I was really excited about the human resources field. I think that was during my junior year. So almost a year and a half later, they had a position available. I did find it on Indeed, but I was able to remember like, oh my gosh, that's Beth Kelly. And so I reached out to her on LinkedIn and told her I was super interested. And I think sometimes even the simplest of connections, like she didn't know me, she didn't hear my whole history in meeting her at class, but she knew that I went to Calvin. She remembered me from that class and was like, oh, yeah, we should definitely interview Robin. So you just never know when that energy or when that initiative that you show will come up as a positive, but it always will come up as a positive.
Yeah, I think that's great to share some of those realities that, again, though, it's being intentional and following through with those ideas. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would be something you'd want young people to know about human resources that maybe you didn't know as a young person, and why, again, it's such a great job for them to consider if they want to go into business?
I know I've been speaking up the relational aspect of human resources, and I think that's why a lot of people do get into HR is because they love people. But I am lucky that this has panned out for me. I think a lot of people who get into human resources may not have exposure to the fact that you're really advocating for an employer just as much as you are advocating for employees. So you really are serving as that like very objective middle ground where you're thinking about the employees, but you can't think all the way about employees, and then you don't make any money as a business and you can't operate anymore and keep them employed. So you really have to serve as both, and that can be pretty challenging, I think, especially as you enter the field, to consider all of those options, because often leaders are not, and that's why you are there, to really serve as that advocate for both sides when one is being tipped too far in one direction.
That's great. Thank you for that. So you had mentioned you started at Wolverine Worldwide as an intern. You loved it. So when did you know it was time to move on when you got your first big girl job? How did you know it was time to move on to the next? Like, how does your career path start to evolve that you end up at a construction company?
Good question. So I started in consulting, the job that I mentioned out of college. That was amazing because I was able to see all different kinds of companies, all different sizes in a very condensed time frame. Like I worked with probably 50 clients over the course of 3 years, which it would take forever to work for 50 companies, so really great exposure starting off. I decided I wanted to work internally at a company. So I wanted to be an employee. I didn't want to come in and consult. I really wanted to be a part of the culture, a part of the staff. So I decided to move to Wolverine and be a part of a more global company. They have locations across the world, which was really exciting to me. I had never been a part of a team that had, multiple HR people, much less multiple locations. And since then, it's been about career growth for me. I knew it would take me a lot longer to get into a position like mine at such a large company. And so I went down in size of the company, but I've been able to increase my decision making as a part of that growth. So it's usually about how can I challenge myself next. Every day is a little bit different, but as I step into some other areas of my career, I think that's what keeps me engaged and me excited about coming into work, as if it's something new and something that is going to make me grow.
Yeah, and I think that's what's great about your type of industry is you can be in a kind of a small mom and pop type company where you're kind of doing lots of things, or you start to specialize at a larger company.
Exactly.
We do have a few minutes left, but why don't you help young people understand some of the other roles around you that support HR? Is there some like entry level? Is it like the assistant, or what are some of the titles that they should be looking for as they enter in?
Absolutely. So I actually got in as a recruiter. I think that's a very common way into HR. When you think about recruiting, it's a very people focused and very process focused function. So most of my day was spent interviewing candidates, understanding what the position looked like, and if the candidate was a match. So I didn't need a lot of experience to go into that. I needed experience, talking to people and professionalism. But overall, I didn't need like HR compliance and some of those other things that are maybe more complicated about my role today. So recruiting was my entryway in. But I would say yes, an HR assistant and HR coordinator would be a great way to receive exposure to all the things that I'm talking about today. You're really, it would be a lot of teaching would be happening. You'd get to learn a lot. I would say it's like school for being an HR person. It would be an HR assistant. I have a generalist on my team, which I would say is maybe a little bit more experienced HR person who can carry out a lot of those tasks. And then usually there's like a manager level or a supervisor level, and then a director level where you're on a leadership team. And so now my team is comprised of a director of marketing, a director of accounting and finance, our general managers of each location. So it's no longer people who speak my language in HR, and my team is really comprised of the primary functions of an organization. So it's been exciting to get to this level, and teaches me a lot too.
A joy listening to you and your career path and how successful you've been in such a short amount of time. You appear to be a young woman, so good for you that you
Thank
focus.
you. Thank you.
We have about a minute left. Why don't you just share a final word of wisdom to young people that are trying to figure this all out?
Sure. Well, I know I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I do think the effort that you put in is what you will experience on the back end. If you don't really care about it and kind of let things fall into your lap, you might not be so happy with where it ends up. But if you care about it and make an effort to say, hey, can we get a coffee? I just want to talk about your career. I'm so interested. Like, people are always excited to talk about themselves. So you should never feel shy or awkward or weird about that. People would be delighted to tell you more about themselves. And that's a connection that you've made that could really benefit you in the future. So that would be my final word of wisdom. Like, don't be scared to just jump in, because people are willing to catch you for sure.
That's great. You've given some great mentor wisdom today, Robin. I really appreciate you sharing your valuable
Yeah.
time with us.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.